People are phobic about all sorts of things. One of the things for me is big, scary bodies of water. I'm always anxious in a big surf, and I'd hate to be in a boat in a storm on the water. Today I want to relay to you a story about a boat in a storm. It's a true story that comes from the Bible. You can find it in Mark's Gospel, chapter 4. It tells us of a time Jesus was on a lake with his disciples, and they were in a boat. And a furious storm arrived. This must have been some storm because several of Jesus' disciples were seasoned fishermen who would have seen plenty of rough seas before. They certainly weren't landlubbers like me. But this storm was so severe and the waves so big that even these experienced seafarers were very afraid. Let me read it to you. A furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." I guess Mark's Gospel is trying to make a pretty obvious point by telling us this story. And it's a point about the remarkable power of Jesus. This was a serious and terrifying storm. But Jesus dealt with it in a moment, with a word. He spoke to the wind and the waves, and they were immediately still and quiet. And it all seemed kind of effortless for Jesus. Clearly, his disciples were seeing a kind of power they hadn't seen before, a power that must have come from another place. But the thing I really want you to see in this story is something perhaps a little less obvious, and it's about how the disciples in that boat reacted on this occasion. Because they weren't high-fiving each other and saying, "Hey, Jesus, that was really cool." And they weren't grabbing their phones to text their friends. And they weren't bowing down and worshipping Jesus. Mark's Gospel says they were terrified and they were asking, "Who is this?" It's fascinating. They found Jesus to be both strange and scary. They found him strange because they didn't know who they were dealing with. I mean, who talks to the weather? And who expects the weather to listen? But they also found him scary. They were scared before because of the storm. They were scared for their lives. But the Gospel says that after the storm was calmed, they were even more terrified. They realised they were in the presence of a power that was far greater than even that ferocious storm. And so my question for you today is this: do you find Jesus to be both strange and scary? And if not, why not? I reckon a lot of people today think they understand enough about Jesus to have formed a conclusion about him. But my guess is a lot of people know less about Jesus than they think they do. And I want to suggest today that if you don't find Jesus to be strange and scary, then perhaps you need to find out more about him. Because when you do get to know Jesus, you realise that the reactions of the disciples that day make perfect sense. It says they were terrified and they were asking each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him."